Well, welcome back. As I said, our guest this evening is Charles Richardson. Charles has a PhD from Rutgers University in New Jersey. He's an election analyst. He's a frequent contributor to a number of media outlets in Australia and in the US, and is a regular contributor to the news website Crikey. Charles, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg.
Who's going to win the election?
Well, look,
Come on,
there's still 4.5 months to go to the election.
If you had to put some money on it, where would you put your money?
Anyone who tells you now that they know who's going to win is talking nonsense.
Let's talk about gambling. Where would you put your money at this point?
Money at this stage has got to be on Barack Obama.
Oh, God.
Peter, that's your worst nightmare.
He has got to be a hot favourite at this stage, I think.
Why do you say that, Charles?
Well, first thing is to look at is the last two elections have both been very close. So the Democrats only need a small swing to take the White House. And in a year where the economy is seen to be going really badly, where the current administration is horrendously unpopular, and where the Democrats have got a candidate who arouses enormous enthusiasm, particularly among groups that historically don't turn out to vote, I think he's going to be extremely difficult to beat.
Well, look, my theory is, and you're an expert in this, but my theory is that the bulk of the white population won't want a black in the White House. They're not going to say that, but I don't think they will, and I think they will turn out as well. Is that a prospect?
I think there are certainly going to be some voters who think that way, yes. But it strikes me that most of the really hardcore sort of white supremacist vote is voting Republican anyway.
No, but
they're not
the whites who don't vote. I mean, there's a large number of whites who just don't turn out.
That's true.
And I reckon they will beat a path to the polling booth simply to prevent a black man taking over the country.
I think there are a lot of potential black candidates who would have had that effect. Like if Jesse Jackson, for example,
but he was
running.
But
he was never going to win. But that's right. Colin Powell, Barack Obama, or if Condoleezza Rice, for example, was the candidate, they're not seen as threatening in the same way. I don't think they'll arouse
I think by the time he gets the election,
angst,
he'll be seen as very threatening.
But just coming back to that,
with his Islamic background, with his left-wing contacts, with his Black Power Christian Church. I mean, it's a
Peter,
worry.
so far, what's happened? And Charles has just travelled right across the US and was at the West Virginia primary.
Well,
West Virginia, I think, is a pretty good litmus test because it's a working class, blue collar state, a lot of white voters.
Yes.
How did Obama go down in West Virginia?
West Virginia will be a difficult state to win, but it's a small state. It's only got 5 votes in the Electoral College. He doesn't need that. He doesn't need places like
he won't win it because the
Tennessee
whites won't vote for
and Arkansas and Alabama. I mean, they're where the white vote is powerful.
How's he going in those states?
But not well.
Yeah.
But in states like Virginia, North Carolina, the Rocky Mountain states, Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada, Montana even, they're the sort of states he looks like picking up.
But nobody knows anything about him. I mean, I follow this as closely as I can, and I still don't understand one foreign policy initiative. And Greg and I talked about this, as you know, before the break, and Greg could only talk in platitudes. I know that's usual, but
well, part of Obama's appeal is that he's seen as someone very fresh and new.
So let's say he's fresh and he's new.
You can describe that as inexperience on one side.
But what are his policies? What's he going to do? What are his policies? Is he announced anything he's going to do?
Yes.
On the international level?
Oh, on the international level, he's very strong on returning the United States to the multilateral approach rather than trying to go it alone.
So that's United Nations.
Well, that's a good thing.
Working through the United Nations through NATO.
So the United Nations
European
is going to govern America's military power. Well, that's fantastic.
I don't think he suggests the United Nations will govern the military power, but
so you have Angola making decisions as to what the United
States will try and work with the international community rather than against it.
So if France vetoes, if France can veto it to its heart's content now.
I think
some of us might say that if France had its day, we wouldn't have had the mess.
We wouldn't have had the mess in Iraq.
France has lost every war.
Honestly,
it's been since 1810. Iraq is not a mess. Iraq is a victory. They've got a democratically elected government. I mean, you guys, I can understand that you wanted Hussein. What was his name? What was the fellow they hanged? Was he Hussein as well?
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein. No relation to Hussein Obama. But I can understand that you...
So do you talk about Winston Howard all the time?
I don't have a problem with John Howard.
Let's.
But if it's John Howard, then it's
John, it should be John
Obama,
Winston
surely.
Howard.
No, I'm
You've
Peter
got to be
Faris.
consistent.
Peter's my middle name. But no, the whole point is that he does have an Islamic heritage, this fellow.
Well, let's just on that. The Clintons threw that at him. The Clintons threw that at him, but it didn't work.
What are the Republicans going to do?
Why should that matter?
And why should it matter?
Well, the Republicans are going to throw it in.
Separation of church and state. Why should
Well,
it
that
matter
wasn't
what
the case
his
with John
religious
Kennedy.
background is?
Everyone was very worried about Kennedy being a Catholic. Now,
That's true, but he won anyway.
Yeah, but we weren't at war with world Catholicism. Here, we're at war with world Islam. And you don't...
Well, I don't think that's right.
Do we really want a US leader who's close to Islam?
I think one thing you could say is that having a leader who understands Islam could be an enormous advantage.
Well, we all understand
we're
Islam.
Actually,
Well, you don't understand it.
I understand it very well.
The United States
and
clearly
I
is...
guarantee you I've read 50 more books
We've only
than
got a
you've
couple
ever
of
read.
minutes. We've only got a couple of minutes, and we really do have to talk about John McCain, because one of the things that's interesting about John McCain, Peter, and Charles, will be interested in your thoughts on this, is he's actually not the typical Republican. A lot of the religious right hate him.
No, he's an independent.
He's a seriously
an
independent Republican.
Yes.
But how do you think he's going to go in galvanising the base?
Well, I think that's going to be a real problem for him. I mean, one thing that was critical to Bush's victory last time was the high turnout he got from particularly evangelical voters in the sort of heartland states, places like Ohio.
Yeah, the white Christians.
Yeah.
But they're not going to vote for...
Well, hang on.
No, they're not.
They're not going to vote for Obama.
No, they're not.
And
But
they're
they
not
might
going
just
to vote
stay,
for Reverend Wright.
But they might just stay home.
Well,
I think a lot of them will stay home. They won't be enthused to turn out and vote for McCain
this is my point,
the way they were to vote for Bush.
I mean, I think there's a real risk here that the whites will turn out en masse, regardless of what they think of McCain.
Well, we're running out of time, Peter, but Charles, it's interesting to get insights. We might have you back before the campaign. Are you going back across the US again?
I think so.
Yeah.
If I can afford it, I'd love to. Go
well,
back.
We can't
go back to the
bankroll your
campaign,
trip, but we might
if,
talk to Crikey.
Channel 31 wants to pay for a research tour, then.
No. Well, look, I think it'd be really good. I think when we get closer to it,
Yeah.
I think it'd be great to have your interpretation of it. And thanks very much for coming.
Thank you. No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Charles.